The words to which I should like to call your attention this evening are to be found in the book of the Acts of the Apostles, in chapter 7, reading from verse 20 to verse 29. Now, those who are here regularly Sunday by Sunday will know that we have been considering this story as recounted here by Stephen on several Sunday evenings. This chapter contains this great defense that was put up by this first Christian martyr, Stephen, who had been arraigned before the great court of Jerusalem, called the Sanhedrin, because he was a Christian, because he was a preacher of the gospel, because he, with all other Christians, was asserting that Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God and the Savior of the world. That was regarded by these Jewish authorities, religious authorities, as well as political authorities, that was regarded as blasphemy. So Stephen is on trial because he is a Christian. And here we have an account of his defense. He is invited to speak by the high priest. Then said the high priest, "Are these things so?" And Stephen replies, and he does so, as we've been seeing, in the form of a recapitulation of the history of the children of Israel. At least he picks out the most salient and important features in the long story of his own race and people. He was a Jew, as these members of the Sanhedrin were. So he addresses them on their own history, his object being to show them that they've completely misunderstood it. They've completely misunderstood Moses, the law, the meaning of the temple and its worship. They have misunderstood the truth even about Abraham, the father of the nation, the men of whom they were so proud. So he takes the case of Abraham and uses that to bring out this point. He then takes the case of Joseph and does exactly the same thing with it. And now we are dealing with his use of his third case, which is the case of Moses. Now we've seen that there are many things that are of great interest about this story of Moses, especially as it is presented by Stephen, who uses it for the end and object I've reminded you of. But we've reached the point now in our consideration of this illustration of Moses, which Stephen uses through the case of Moses. We've reached the point at which we have seen that Stephen demonstrates that Moses, for one thing, is a type of Christ. He was a kind of prefiguring of the Son of God in so many ways. We saw that last Sunday night. But now, tonight, we go on with our consideration of this story, because Stephen shows here quite plainly that Moses was not only a type of Christ as the great leader, the great emancipator, the great deliverer of his people. He is also something else, and that is, he's a very wonderful example of how one becomes truly one of God's people. And this is, of course, by means of faith. Now, I read to you at the beginning what the author of the Epistle to the Hebrews has to say about Moses. You noticed the similarity. It was obvious as I read that part of that 11th chapter of that Epistle to the Hebrews at the beginning. It's obvious that the author of that epistle is doing exactly the same thing as Stephen does on this occasion. He, again, uses Moses as one of the great examples of the faith principle. He's concerned to inculcate that principle. The Hebrew Christians were in trouble because they were tending, because of various discouragements, to look back at the old Jewish religion, and some of them were even returning to it. And this man takes up this whole matter and says, "You're doing that because you've never really understood that the whole central principle of the Christian faith is faith." So he tells them what faith is, and then in order to enable them to grasp it and to understand it, he gives them that series of illustrations, very much in the same way as Stephen does on this occasion, as recorded in this chapter. Now then, I want to take these two accounts together in order to show, by means of the case of Moses, how it is that one becomes a Christian, why it is that anyone becomes a Christian. Now let's look at the story together. In these verses that we're looking at, we are now concentrating on what we may well describe as the great turning point in Moses' life. He suddenly finds himself face to face with a great and a momentous decision. And here is the point at which he became the man that we know and that we read of. Great things happened to him afterwards, but none of them would have happened were it not that he faced the issue, the fundamental issue, here at this particular point. And it was the result of this decision that led to all the great and amazing things that we know to be true about his life and about his career. Therefore, it is, I say, a most valuable and a most instructive case. We can never consider it too carefully. It's of value to us, I say, because it does present to us the whole Christian case and shows us that we are called upon to do something with respect to it. Now, no man can be a Christian without knowing it. No one can unconsciously be a Christian. That's impossible. Though there are great variations in the way in which people actually become Christian, there is one thing that is always present. It is a universal principle, and that is, there is always an element of crisis. There is always an element of decision. Now, the crisis may vary in intensity. It may be highly dramatic, it may be very quiet. That doesn't matter at all. All I'm saying is, and contending for, that there is always a crisis. There is always the facing of an issue. And one can't do that without knowing it. You can't be a Christian unconsciously. If a man tells me, as sometimes people do, but I've always been a Christian, I say to that man, well then you've never been a Christian. No one's born a Christian. We are all born in sin. We are all shapen in iniquity. We are all born the children of Adam. There's no such thing as being born as a Christian. That's why it is the final nonsense to talk about a Christian country and to assume that because people are born and brought up in a certain country that they're automatically Christian. That is a real denial of Christianity. I know of no more thorough denial of it than just that. There's no such thing. We become Christians, and we know that we have become Christians. There is, I say then, in all of us, the same element of crisis, critical situation, as that which we find in the case of Moses. Now let's look at this together. What do we find here? Well, the first thing we find is this, that Moses suddenly found himself confronted by a choice. I say suddenly. I can't prove that it was sudden, but we're rather given the impression that it was, because the 23rd verse puts it like this. And when he was fully 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. 40 years old, remember. The implication being that he'd gone on living. You remember how for 3 months he was brought up in his own father and mother's home. But because of this cruel edict of the then Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, who had commanded all these male Israelites, in a sense, to be put to death, or to make a life at any rate impossible for them, he'd been put into a little basket onto the river, and there he was found by the daughter of Pharaoh, and she adopted him as her own child, and he was brought up in all the pomp and ceremony and all the greatness of the royal palace of Egypt. And he was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds. Legend, secular history suggests to us that he was indeed an amazingly able man in understanding, in wisdom, in knowledge, good student, but also a man of action, a very good military man, we understand. And there he was, for 40 years, virtually. He enjoyed this life, and his prospects, of course, were exciting and most thrilling. For an ambitious man, it's impossible to imagine brighter or greater prospects. Now, what we are told is that suddenly into the midst of all that, there came this thought. It entered into his heart. It came into his heart to to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And immediately that enters his heart, he is confronted by a choice. Now this, I say, is something that is universally true. Here he is confronted by the choice of going on as he was, or identifying himself with the people to whom he belonged. Here is the choice. Now, my argument is that this is a perfect way of presenting the gospel and its message to us. The gospel comes to us and always presents us with a choice. And this is something which is quite inevitable for this reason, that we are living in a world in which there are two mighty forces working upon us. One of them is God, and the other is the devil. The powers of good, the powers of evil, heaven and hell. These forces are active in the world. And of course they're entirely different. They're completely opposed. You can't imagine a greater antithesis than that between God and the devil. So that the moment we begin to live in this world, we are already confronted by the choice. Now this is the basic, fundamental position on which the message of the Bible is based and on which the gospel is based. Because this, you see, according to the Bible, is the whole explanation of men and life in this world. Now, let me take you right back to the beginning. This was the choice that was confronted by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They'd been made by God. They were enjoying the life of God. And all was well. The tempter comes, the devil comes, making another suggestion. It's the exact opposite of all they'd had and all they'd ever known. Hath God said? What right has God to say? Doubts, queries, another way is presented. Don't do this, do that. Do this, you'll be like God, you'll be equal to him. That's why he doesn't want. Immediately, you see, the two ways, the absolute opposites, antithesis, they've got to choose which they're going to do. That's the beginning of the story. And it has continued the same ever since. We saw it in the case of Abraham. Brought up a pagan in Ur of the Chaldeans. Call comes to him, come out, and go to a land of which I will tell thee. Immediately, he's confronted by this choice. Stay where you are, get up, go out, listen to the voice of God. And here we find it once more in the case of Moses. And indeed, Moses, at the end of his life, as you can read in the book of Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, he, when he was about to leave this world, he impressed upon these children of Israel whom he was leading that they likewise were confronted by two possibilities: blessing, cursing, Mount Ebal, Mount Gerizim. It's one or the other, he says. Choose which you're going to do. There are these two possibilities. He says, you're going into the land, I'm going, but you'll be led into the land, and there will always be these two ways before you. He impressed it upon them. And the men who followed him, Joshua, he at the end of his life said exactly the same thing. Choose ye this day whom ye will serve. It's always that. You get it in one of the most dramatic stories in the whole of the Old Testament. The story of the prophet Elijah on Mount Carmel. And this is how he puts it. How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, well then follow him. It's one or the other. And you see, this isn't the Old Testament message only. This is the very essence of our Lord's own preaching. Listen to it. Enter ye in, he says, at the strait gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be that go in thereat, because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Strait gate, wide gate, narrow way, broad way. Here it is. He goes on saying this sort of thing. He turns to the people and he says, you cannot serve God and mammon. It can't be done. It's one or the other. Well, now here you see is the great message of the Bible, that we're all confronted by these two possibilities. And this is a choice that comes to every one of us. It doesn't always come in the same way as I was saying. It isn't the way in which it comes that matters. Sometimes, you see, it comes to people in the way that it seemed to have come to Moses. There was nothing in his circumstances that forced him to take this choice. He was going on with his life, but it came into his heart. Thought entered his mind. Perhaps he read something. Perhaps he was reminded of something. Memory may have done the work. However, it came to him, it came to his heart, and he was immediately confronted by the choice and by the decision. Sometimes people are confronted by this choice and this crisis in a comparatively calm and quiet manner. It may be perhaps even in a service such as this. We may have come to a service quite heedlessly and thoughtlessly, but something said, and it seems to be especially for us, it comes to our heart, it fixes on us. We are suddenly confronted by a choice. There's no excitement about it, there's no pressure brought to bear for a decision, but the truth gets us, and we feel, I've got to do something about it. We try to get rid of it, but we can't get rid of it. It comes back to us, it follows us, it's always there, niggling at us, until at last we have to take our decision. It's quite quiet sometimes. It isn't always like that. Now, I can summarize this to save time by telling you two stories that we are told in the 16th chapter of the book of the Acts of the Apostles, of two people becoming Christians. The one was a woman called Lydia. She was a good woman, a religious woman, a woman who worshipped after the fashion and the manner of the Jews. The Apostle Paul, visiting Philippi, heard that she and a number of other women went to pray every Sunday afternoon outside the city by the side of a river. And so he joined the company, and he began to talk to them. He sat down, we are told, amongst them, and he began to speak to them the word of the Lord. And as he did so, the Lord opened the heart of Lydia, that she paid attention unto the things that were spoken of Paul, and she became a Christian. But you see, in the same chapter, in the same place, Philippi, there's another story told. There was a jail there, and there was a man whose job it was to be the keeper of the prison. Rather a violent character, one gathers. And Paul and his companion Silas were imprisoned, and he put their feet fast into the stocks and thrust them into the innermost prison. But having done that, you see, and he had gone to bed, or perhaps he was carousing, we don't know what he was doing, but we do know this, that suddenly an earthquake took place, and the whole place, the very foundations of the prison were shaken, and all the prisoners were set free. And this man, seeing that the prisoners were free, took out his sword and was on the verge of committing suicide. You can't imagine anything more violent, can you? Earthquake, sword, suicide. Suddenly Paul shouts to him, "Do thyself no harm, for we are all here." And that led to the conversion of that man. The earthquake, the violence, the alarm, and the voice of Paul. "Sirs," he says, "what must I do to be saved?" Well, you see, it doesn't matter whether it's violent or whether it's quiet. The same choice. And so you find a great variation in the stories that people give. I was only reading last night, strangely enough, after I'd prepared all this, the account of the conversion of a man, I think an American soldier, originally, during the last war. This man, who'd been quite heedless and thoughtless about these things, wasn't a Christian at all. Suddenly one day he put his foot upon a mine and it exploded and blew off his foot. And that was the means of his conversion. Many a man has been brought to this place of crisis and of decision by an illness or by an accident like that. I've known men who first faced this issue, this crisis, standing over the open grave of someone who was very dear to them. They'd never thought about it before, but this made them think. Others have even had to go to their deathbed before they have truly faced this issue. Oh, the ways are almost endless. We needn't be concerned about the mode, the manner. What we are always certain of is this. We read that it came into the heart of Moses. Who put it there? God put it there. And it is God who always brings everybody to confront this great issue. A friend may have invited you to this service tonight, but believe me, it is God who has used that friend. Unconsciously, perhaps the friend doesn't know it, but God moves in a mysterious way his wonders to perform. And his concern about us is such that in these varied manners, he pulls us up. He makes us stop. As Moses, in the midst of his glittering career, suddenly begins to think about his people and is confronted by the choice. So God, in these many ways, stops us, arrests us, brings us to a halt, and compels us to face the issue. That's the first thing we see here. But secondly, it is very plain and clear that there are only two possibilities, and two only. The world tonight is full of divisions and distinctions, and mankind makes such a lot of them. We're very conscious of that these days, iron curtains, different points of view. But my dear friend, it isn't iron curtains that constitute the real division. There is something very much in common amongst men on both sides of the iron curtain. They may differ politically, but as human beings, they're all the same. There are only two ultimate possibilities in life. We are all of us either for God or else we're against God. And nothing else matters. The color of your skin doesn't matter at all. What does matter is, are you one of God's people or are you one of the people who are against God? You may be very clever. You may be very learned. You may be very ignorant and illiterate. It doesn't matter. The one question is, are you for God or are you against God? No, there is no other possibility. There is no such thing as neutrality in the realm of the things of the Spirit. No decision is always a decision against God, for we are all by nature against God. The natural mind is enmity against God, is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. We are all born God-haters. We're all against God. Some people I know say, I've always believed in God. That means they've never believed in God. What they believe in is some figment of their own imagination. You confront such people by the God of the Bible, and they'll soon begin to show their hatred of him. They've got a God whom they can manipulate and handle, a God made after their own image and fashion. And they hate the living God of whom you can read in this book. So I say there is no such thing as neutrality. We are either for God or we are against him. There's no man's land in this matter. We all of us are inevitably in one of the two camps. Our Lord himself said it. He who is not for me is against me. Now the call of God comes to all of us, every one of us. The call to follow Christ is universal in some way or another. And so I say we are all confronted by the two possibilities that face Moses. Which is it to be? Is he to go on as the son of Pharaoh's daughter and all that's going to follow that, or is he going to identify himself with his people? And this is the question that comes to all of us. Are our lives to be lived to the glory of God, or are they to be lived to my own glory and the glory of man and the glory of the world? There it is. It's inevitable. Every one of you is facing this. You can't evade it. It comes in these varied ways, but that is the ultimate choice. Now, the thing that this particular story is so instructive about is this, and this is what I want to use it for chiefly, is that it tells us that Moses chose for God. That's the staggering thing we are told here. The case is so presented by Stephen, and indeed by the author of the Epistle to the Hebrews, that we may very well miss this staggering element in the story. But try to think of it for a moment. Try to conjure up in your mind the position of Moses, and especially the prospects, and realize that this man decided to turn his back on all that and to identify himself with the children of Israel in the position that they were in. Now, here is the question. This is where we can learn from Moses. Why did he do that? What's the explanation of Moses' decision for God? Well, they're here perfectly plainly on the surface of the story. The first thing that obviously weighed with Moses and really decided the whole issue, it seems to me, is this: that Moses realized who he was. What do I mean? Well, Moses realized, I say, that he wasn't the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He'd been brought up as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He was accepted as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He had all the advantages of the son of Pharaoh's daughter. The whole world lauded him as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. His prospects were all in terms of his being the son of Pharaoh's daughter. But Moses knew that he was not the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He was one of the children of Israel. They were his people. He belonged to them. They were the people of God, and they were his people. Now this is the thing, you see, that persuaded Moses. He came to the conclusion that this thing was of infinitely greater value than all the possibilities that were his in terms of his being regarded as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Wealth, affluence, success, promotion, ultimate rule perhaps, military prowess and victories, all this man realizes are nothing when put up against the fact that he belongs to the children, the people of God. Yeah, they're despised, they're nobodies at the moment, but they're the people of God. And this man not only realizes this, he realizes the value of this, the importance of this, and this is the thing that really makes him decide. You may say to me, what has this got to do with us? My dear friend, this is the whole essence of the matter. The most important thing we have to do in this life and in this world is to realize what we are as men and women. We are all brought up as Moses was, with the wrong idea as to our own identity and as to what we are. The world would have us believe that man is just an animal. A reasoning animal, certainly, but only an animal. Not essentially different, they say, not a unique creation. He's just someone who's evolved a little bit further than the other animals. The cerebrum is more highly developed, but man is really only an animal, and he's nothing beyond an animal. And what is he in this world for? Well, he's in this world to get on. He's in this world to do well for himself. He's in this world to make money. He's in this world to eat. He's in this world to drink. He's in this world to have success. He's in this world to indulge his sex as the animals do. At least that's the impression given by the newspapers, isn't it, and the films? This is the big thing. This is the great object and purpose of life. This is the thing we should be most concerned about. That is what the world teaches us. That's all that the wisdom of Egypt, the wisdom of the world, would put into our minds and into our hearts. It says, isn't life wonderful? Look at the opportunities and the prospects. You've never had it so good. Money's free. We're all working. Wow, wonderful. Get on. Do well with yourself. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself. After all, you're only an animal. People, we are told, were foolish enough in the past to believe that there was an unseen world and a spiritual realm and a God, and they tried to live a good life. And they didn't believe in sex perversions. They thought they were horrible and foul. But they say that's all wrong. These things are natural and legitimate. Why not? Isn't this the teaching of the world? Isn't this the wisdom of the modern Egypt in which we all find ourselves and in which we are brought up? And here it is, pandering to us, building us up, making us feel great, showing us the wonderful opportunities and prospects. Get on with it, they say. There it is. But when we are confronted by this voice of God, this thought that comes to us, that enters the heart in one of the varied ways I've been describing to you, immediately we see something else. What is it? That is just a lie. It's a travesty of what man really is. It isn't true. That man is not just an animal. There's something else. What's that? Oh, man has got a soul. Man is not just one of the animals that's evolved. He is a unique creation of God, made in the image and the likeness of God. He's been made by God. He's been made for God. God made him that he, men, might enjoy God, might enjoy life with him, that he might live to the glory of God, that he might be God's representative in this world, that he might have fellowship and communion with the everlasting and eternal God. But man has got this which is called the soul, the spirit. that though he does have correspondence with men, and though he's bigger and different from the animals, the greatest thing, the real glory of men is that there's that within him that transcends everything that he's seen, and he can penetrate to the eternal. He has a feeling that he belongs to eternity. God has put eternity in his heart. Now, this message, you see, is one that comes to us from the Bible. This is the whole message of Christianity, the message of the gospel. And it comes to us and tells us, now, this is the truth about you. You'd been living the other for 40 years. Moses had gone on doing that and enjoying it and thinking it was marvelous and wonderful. Suddenly this other thought comes, and he's in a quandary, he's in a difficulty. Which is it? Which am I to do? Which am I? And I've told you of his decision. This is the kind of decision that makes a man a Christian. He suddenly hears the Son of God saying this to him: what shall it profit a man though he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? He suddenly realizes that he's been misunderstanding himself, misconceiving himself and his potentialities and the truth about himself. Suddenly it comes to him: dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul? This thing that's in me, that links me to God and the divine and the eternal. I've neglected it, I've ignored it, I didn't know anything about it, but now I see it, and I've got to make my choice. This is the first thing that explains the decision of Moses. He realized who he was, that he was an Israelite and not an Egyptian. Have you, my friend, come to this fundamental realization? Have you realized that you're a man and not an animal? Have you realized what you are, the meaning of life, your destiny? Have you realized you've got a soul that is bigger than the universe? That's the essence of this decision. Once a man realizes that he is a living soul, his whole outlook is changed. But come, let me tell you the second element that obviously entered into Moses' decision. It was his sense of righteousness and of justice. What I read here is this: and when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him, and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. And the next day he showed himself unto two of them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, saying, Sirs, you are brethren, why do we wrong one to another? But he that did his neighbour wrong thrust him away, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me, as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? You see, Moses gets into trouble. Why? And has to flee from the land of Egypt and become a shepherd in Midian. Why? Well, because he's got a sense of righteousness and a sense of justice. He was concerned about the oppression of his people. The Egyptians were oppressing them in an utterly unjust and unrighteous manner. And Moses is troubled about this. The moment he thinks of them and realizes who he is and his identity with them, he's troubled about the injustice, the unrighteousness, the wrongness of it all, and he's got to do something about it. This is the thing that moves him. And when he comes this day and finds an Egyptian maltreating one of his own brothers, he deals with it. The man is wrong, the Egyptian is unrighteous, it's unjust. And in the name of justice, he's got to act. And he does. And the same day when he finds his two fellow countrymen fighting in the same way and one wronging another, he acts in exactly the same principle. Moses' decision, you see, is determined by his sense of truth and of righteousness and of justice. It's obvious, isn't it, in the case of Moses? But have you seen that it's equally obvious in this whole matter of becoming a Christian? Why should one become a Christian? Why should one listen to the voice of God? Why should one listen to this message about the soul and its salvation? Why should one forsake the life of the world and follow Christ? Here's the first answer: the essential rightness and truth of the godly and of the Christian life. It's essentially right. What's wrong with worshipping God? What's wrong with praising God? Tell me, what's your objection to bowing your knees before the everlasting and eternal God? Can't you see that the greatest privilege that men can ever have is to hold communion and to have fellowship with God? Can't you see, I say, that God's law is essentially righteous? What's wrong with the Ten Commandments? Why do you object to the Ten Commandments? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with honoring the name of God and refusing to bow down before a graven image, as so many are doing, whether it be statesmen or countries or motor cars or money? What's wrong with bowing down before the eternal God and refusing to bow down to anybody or anything else? What's wrong in honoring one day out of 7 that we may commune with God? What's wrong with all the negative injunctions of the Ten Commandments? What's your objection to them? Can't you see tonight that if the whole world simply lived the Ten Commandments, we wouldn't have these problems and these statesmen in conferences? If only everybody lived according to the Ten Commandments, the world would be paradise. You'd have justice and equity and righteousness and truth. Add to that the Sermon on the Mount. And you see depicted a life of truth, a life of uprightness, a life of discipline, a life of self-control, a life which is a noble life, a glorious life, a life which dignifies man and makes him a creature that is like his Creator. Oh, let me put it to you in just one phrase. Look at the picture that we are given of the Lord Jesus Christ in the New Testament. That's man. That's life as it should be lived. Can you cast a stone at him? Have you any accusation you can bring against him? His contemporaries tried. They tried their best, but they failed completely. Of course they couldn't. He was without sin. He was holy, harmless, undefiled. He lived a life of obedience to the law of his Father. He gloried in it. He rejoiced in it. He went about doing good. What a perfect life. There it is. And this invites us to live that life. It's right. It's just. It's true. Can't you see that, my friend? But let me give you the negative. Look at the wrongness of the sinful life. Look at the wrongness of the persecution of the children of Israel by the Egyptians. Look at the wrongness of this individual Egyptian maltreating the Israelite. Look at the wrongness of this Jew maltreating the other Jew. The wrongness of the sinful life. Moses saw the rightness and the wrongness, and there was no difficulty about deciding. Have you seen the wrongness of the godless and the sinful life? Let me show it to you. It's rebellion. It's rebellion against God. You are rebelling against the God who made you. You haven't made yourself. You haven't brought yourself into being. It's God who's made you. It is God that has made us and not we ourselves. And you are pitting yourself against the everlasting and eternal God who not only made you but who sustains everything, a God of love and of mercy and of compassion. You are rebelling against him, and rebellion is sin, it's evil, it's wrong. It's disobedience. It is lawlessness. And that's the trouble with every one of us. And that's the trouble with this country tonight, lawlessness. Can't you see the clever people kicking against the laws? They want to break them. They want to change them all. Why? So that they can live like pigs. Live like animals. Live a lawless life. No limits, no prohibitions, no restraints. But look at the selfishness of that sinful, godless life. You see, they only look at one side of it, don't they? And it seems so marvelous to kick across the traces and sow your wild oats, do what you like. But look at the selfishness of it all. Think of the selfishness in the world tonight. These people who leave their wives and little children, the cads, the selfish cads. These people who don't hesitate to trample on the most delicate and sensitive feelings just to gratify their own passing lust and whim. The selfishness, the self-centeredness, the smallness of it all. Look at the suffering that is caused. Look at the shame that it all leads to. Look at the baseness of the life of the man who rejects God. Read their autobiographies. They're even admitting it. They're even gloating in it now. But look at it. The shame and the foulness and the evil and the ugliness, the baseness of it all. The Apostle Paul Asunder Paul this in just one phrase. In the 6th chapter of his epistle to the Romans, he reminds these men, you see, they were once sinners, they've been converted, they've become Christians, and he puts this question to them: what fruit had he then in those things whereof you are now ashamed? He said, you're heartily ashamed of them now, but what fruit did you have in them even when you were doing them? And let me ask you the same plain question in the name of God. What does the godless life really give you? Is to be drunk something to boast about? Is to commit adultery something to glory in? And is it the hallmark of manhood and of real liberty? My friends, face the question. See the wrongness of the sinful life, as well as the essential rightness and justice and truth of the godly life. Moses saw these two things very plainly and clearly. There was no difficulty about deciding. But then another thing that we see so plainly and clearly, and this is brought out particularly in Hebrews 11, is that he took the long view. He considered the end. Oh, what a principle this is. He didn't merely look at the temporary position. He looked right through to the end. And this is what he saw. At the moment, the prospects of Egypt were great and wonderful. The children of Israel were slaves and serfs, groaning under a most terrible injustice and cruelty. Pleasure, misery. And that is how the world would always put this thing to us. People say, miserable Christianity, so narrow, so small, so confined. Come out into the world, come and have your good time, come and really live, come and let yourself go. What a marvelous life it is. And this other Christian life, how small and contemptible and mean it appears to be. And because they only look at it, you see, superficially, and only look at the immediate, they decide to stay in Egypt, unlike Moses. But Moses, we are told, he looked beyond the present, the immediate. He looked to the end. And so the author of the Epistle to the Hebrews puts it like this. He chose rather to suffer affliction with the people of God, rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Oh, pregnant phrase. For a season. Your worldly joys, they don't last. They're only temporary. Fading is the worldling's pleasure. All his boasted pomp and show. They don't last. They're only temporary. They're only for the immediate present. And the Christian, on the other hand, is suffering. But this is only, again, for the immediate present. It isn't permanent. It doesn't go on. You've got to look beyond the present to the future. Broad is the gate, wide is the way that leadeth where to destruction. And many there be that go in there. They're jostling one another. The crowd is against Christ, it's against God. Come with us, they say, have a good time. Join our ranks. And the world is joining it, broad and wide. But it leadeth to destruction. On the other end, strait is the gate and narrow is the way that leadeth where? Unto life. You seem to be asked to be giving up everything if you become a Christian. Giving up, my dear friend, you're gaining. If we suffer with him, we shall also reign with him. Look to the end. Keep your eye on the ultimate, the pleasures of sin for a season. With Moses, take the long view. But he not only saw that the pleasures of sin were only for a season. There's that other illuminating phrase in the 11th of Hebrews. We are told that he had his eye, he looked to the recompense of the reward. Moses saw in a flash that if he really obeys this thing that's within him that urges him to identify himself with his people and to become their deliverer, he's going to forsake all the greatness and the glory and the pomp and the privilege of Egypt. He's giving up everything for nothing but apparent slavery and suffering. But he had his eye on the recompense of the reward. What is it? Well, in this life it's wonderful. The moment you take this great decision, give your life and yourself to God in Christ, you'll know that your sins are forgiven. You'll enjoy a peace that you've never imagined to be possible for a man in this world. You'll have satisfactions that are beyond description. I'm spending many Sunday mornings in trying to describe this very thing. You'll have a joy which is unspeakable and full of glory. You'll start living a life that's a pure life, a clean life, a holy life, a satisfying life, a life with a purpose. You'll no longer be afraid of death. You'll be able to face it with a smile. Its terrors will have gone. You'll be able to say, the terrors of law and of God with me can have nothing to do. My Saviour's obedience and blood hide all my transgressions from view. The recompense of the reward. Life with trials hard may test me. Heaven will give me sweeter rest. These are the sentiments of God's people always. Jesus, I my cross have taken, all to leave and follow thee. Destitute, despised, forsaken, thou from hence my all shalt be. Perish every fond ambition. All I've thought and hoped and known, perish the lot. Yet how rich is my condition. God and heaven are still mine own. Life with trials hard may press me. Heaven will give me sweeter rest. The recompense of the reward, and the terrors of death have gone. And oh, beyond it, the glory that is beyond human description. It doth not yet appear what we shall be, but this we do know, that when he doth appear, we shall see him as he is, and we shall be like him. Listen, says Paul to the Romans, I am persuaded that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. There is a day coming when the Christ of God will return to this world, and this world will be rid of evil and sin. There'll be a new creation, as it were, a regeneration of the whole universe. It'll be glory, and you and I who belong to Christ and to God will be in it and sharing in it and enjoying it forever and forever. The recompense of the reward. The pleasures of sin for a season. All the greatness and the pomp of Egypt. Yes, but they're pagans. They don't know God. These are my people. They know God. They may be passing through the furnace of affliction, but they're God's people. They're going to Canaan. They'll end in the heavenly Canaan. I look to eternity, to the glory everlasting. And all the present is but as nothing. But lastly, think of the company to which we belong. This interesting thing that we are told here about Moses, how did he do all these things? Why did he do them? Here's the answer in Hebrews 11. He endured as seeing him who is invisible. Oh, the company to which a man belongs when he chooses, as Moses did, to belong to the people of God. He belongs to the saints of the Old Testament. He belongs to the same company as Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and this man Moses and the great glorious prophets, all who are described in Hebrews 11. That becomes your company. They're the people to whom you now belong, and all the mighty martyrs and confessors of the ages and of the centuries. These are the people with whom you're going to identify yourself, having seen the choice. But I don't stop with the people. I see the one who has made them, seeing him who is invisible. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And what are the treasures of Egypt? What are all the treasures of your pyramids and your palaces? When you see God, seeing him who is invisible, walking as a pilgrim and a stranger through this world, but in the company of God. And above all, walking after this Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, looking unto Jesus. He's the leader. He's there at the head of the company. You don't stop even at the apostles. You look at their master, the one who called them. Jesus himself, Son of God. He's in the van. He's leading. The world may despise me and laugh at me and mock me. but I belong to him, and I'm walking in his steps who did no wrong, neither was guile found in his mouth. Is there a privilege in the universe that is comparable to this, that he is not ashamed to call me his brother, and that God is not ashamed to be called the God of his people? It's a good thing to be a Britisher, if you like, or to belong to any other country, and people boast of these things. But this is what you can boast of. If you take Moses' choice, you become a citizen of God, a citizen of heaven, a child of God, a child of the King of Kings and of the Lord of Lords. Oh, the privilege, the glory of belonging to such a company and to such a leader. My dear friend, have you seen all this? Have you felt all this? Have you considered all this? Have you really faced these things, the only two alternatives? God or the devil, heaven or hell, everlasting bliss and joy and glory, or eternal misery and shame. There's the choice. All the glory is offered you for nothing. God so loved the world that rebelled against him and rejected him, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. My dear friend, have you seen it? Have you taken Moses' choice? If you have, listen to this. You'll be ready to agree with this. O star of truth, down shining through clouds and doubt and fear, I ask beneath thy guidance my pathway may appear. However long the journey, how hard soe'er it be, though I be lone and weary, lead on. I'll follow thee. I know thy blessed radiance can never lead astray, however ancient custom may point some other way, even if through untrod deserts or over trackless sea. Though I be lone and weary, lead on. I'll follow thee. The bleeding feet of martyrs thy toilsome way have trod, but fires of human passion may light the way to God. Then, though my feet should falter while I thy beams can see, though I be lone and weary, lead on. I'll follow thee, though loving friends forsake me or plead with me in tears, though angry foes may threaten and shake my soul with fears, still to my high allegiance I will not faithless be. Through life or death, forever, lead on. I'll follow thee. Have you seen him? The moment you see him, there'll be no hesitation. You'll turn to him and say, lead on. I'll follow thee. The glory and the privilege of it all. Amen.
We do hope that you've been helped by the preaching of Dr. Martyn Lloyd-Jones. All of the sermons contained within the MLJ Trust audio library are now available for free download. You may share the sermons or broadcast them. However, because of international copyright, please be advised that we are asking first that these sermons never be offered for sale by a third party. And second, that these sermons will not be edited in any way for length or to use as audio clips. You can find our contact information on our website at mljtrust.org. That's mljtrust.org.